Sarah Mitchell loved Friday nights. After a long week of teaching fourth grade at Lincoln Elementary in Boston, she'd pour herself a glass of wine, put on some music, and settle in to grade the week's assignments. It was therapeutic in a way, seeing her students' progress, understanding their struggles, celebrating their breakthroughs. Tonight was no different. She had 23 math homework assignments to grade, a stack of spelling tests, and reading comprehension worksheets. She'd started with the math, simple multiplication problems, nothing too challenging for most of her students. Emma Bennett's homework was 15th in the stack. Emma was a quiet girl, always neat and organized, consistently earning A's and B's. She sat in the back row, rarely volunteered answers, but always completed her work thoroughly. Sarah began checking Emma's problems. 7 dex 8 56, correct. 9 dex 6 54, correct. 12 dex 5 60, correct. But as Sarah marked the problems, she noticed something odd. In the margins of the paper, in tiny letters barely visible, Emma had written something. Sarah leaned closer, squinting at the miniature handwriting. "Help me." Sarah's heart skipped. She looked more carefully at the entire page. There were more messages, scattered throughout the margins and between problems, so small they were almost invisible. "Please, scared. He hurts me. Don't tell him I told." Sarah's hands started shaking. She set down her red pen and picked up the paper, holding it under her desk lamp for better light. The messages were deliberate, not random doodles or idle writing. They were carefully placed where most people wouldn't look, written small enough that a casual observer would miss them entirely. But Sarah wasn't a casual observer. She'd been teaching for 14 years. She'd learned to look at the whole paper, not just the answers. She'd learned that children communicated in many ways, and sometimes the most important messages weren't in the work itself. She grabbed her phone, took photos of every message, then sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Emma Bennett, 10 years old, lived with her father and stepmother in a nice neighborhood. Father was some kind of businessman. Richard Bennett, always well-dressed when he came to parent-teacher conferences, always polite and engaged. Stepmother was Michelle Bennett, worked in marketing, seemed caring. Sarah tried to remember if Emma had ever shown signs of abuse. Bruises? She mentally reviewed the past few months. Emma wore long sleeves a lot, even on warm days. But so did other kids. That alone wasn't suspicious. Behavioral changes? Emma had always been quiet, but Sarah thought back. Had she gotten quieter? More withdrawn? Sarah realized with a sinking feeling that yes, Emma had gradually become more isolated. She used to talk to a few other girls during recess. Lately she sat alone, reading. How had Sarah missed this? How had everyone missed this? She looked at the homework again, at those desperate tiny messages. "Help me, scared. He hurts me." Sarah made a decision. She picked up her phone and dialed. "Child Protective Services. How can I help you?" Sarah took a deep breath. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a teacher at Lincoln Elementary. I need to report suspected child abuse." Over the next 20 minutes, Sarah explained everything to the CPS intake worker. The hidden messages, Emma's gradual withdrawal, the long sleeves, the way Emma flinched sometimes when people moved too quickly near her. "Do you have any direct evidence of abuse?" the worker asked. "Visible injuries? Statements from the child? Anything concrete?" "Just these messages hidden in her homework," Sarah admitted. "But they're explicit. He hurts me, scared. This is a cry for help." "I understand your concern, Miss Mitchell. We'll open an investigation. Someone will contact the family and conduct interviews. In the meantime, keep documenting anything you observe. If you see any injuries or if Emma makes any direct statements to you, call us immediately." After hanging up with CPS, Sarah called the school principal, Linda Chen. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Friday, but this couldn't wait. "Linda, I'm sorry to call so late. I found something in Emma Bennett's homework that I need to report." She explained everything again. Linda listened without interrupting. "You did the right thing," Linda said when Sarah finished. "We'll need to follow school protocol. I'll notify the school counselor and the superintendent. Continue documenting everything. And Sarah, be prepared for this to get complicated. The Bennetts are prominent in the community. Richard Bennett sits on several charity boards. This isn't going to be simple." "I don't care about simple," Sarah said. "I care about Emma being safe." "I know," Linda said gently. "That's why you're a great teacher. I'll support you every step of the way. But I'm warning you, cases like this can get messy." Sarah barely slept that night. She kept seeing those tiny messages, Emma's careful handwriting forming desperate pleas for help. She kept thinking about all the times Emma had sat quietly in class, suffering, and no one had noticed. Monday morning, Sarah arrived at school early and went straight to her classroom. She pulled Emma's previous assignments from her files and examined them carefully under good light. More messages. hidden in the margins of old spelling tests, tucked between lines of reading comprehension answers, so small and carefully placed that Sarah had completely missed them the first time. Scared every day. Please help, no one sees. Sarah photographed everything and sent it to CPS and to Linda Chen. Emma had been asking for help for weeks, maybe months, and every adult in her life had failed to notice. When students began arriving, Sarah watched Emma carefully. The girl came in quietly, went straight to her desk in the back, and pulled out a book. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. Sarah wanted desperately to pull Emma aside, to tell her that someone had finally seen her messages, that help was coming. But she knew she couldn't. Interfering with a CPS investigation could jeopardize the case. So she went about teaching her normal lessons, all while watching Emma from the corner of her eye. At recess, while other children played, Emma sat on a bench with her book. Sarah stationed herself nearby, observing. Emma's body language was defensive, hunched shoulders, arms wrapped around herself, constantly scanning her surroundings like she was watching for threats. How had Sarah never really noticed this before? The signs had been there all along. That afternoon, a social worker from CPS came to the school to interview Emma. Sarah wasn't allowed to be present, but afterward, the school counselor, Margaret Torres, came to Sarah's classroom. How did it go? Sarah asked anxiously. Margaret's expression was troubled. Emma denied everything. Said she's fine, that her family is fine, that she doesn't know why she wrote those messages. She said she was just practicing writing small. Sarah felt like she'd been punched. That's not true. You saw the messages. They weren't practice. They were specific. They were a cry for help. I know, Margaret said. But Sarah, you have to understand. Abuse victims often protect their abusers, especially children. They're scared of what will happen if they tell. Emma might have realized that someone saw her messages and panicked. So what happens now? Sarah asked. CPS will continue the investigation. They'll interview the parents, do home visits, talk to Emma again. But without Emma confirming the abuse or visible evidence, it's going to be hard to prove anything. That evening, Sarah received a call from the school principal. Sarah, I need to inform you that Richard Bennett called me today. He's very upset about the CPS investigation. He's demanding to know who made the report and threatening legal action against the school for what he's calling false accusations and harassment. Sarah's stomach dropped. Can he do that? He can try, Linda said, but your report was made in good faith based on concerning evidence. You're protected under mandatory reporter laws. Don't let him intimidate you. But I want you to be aware. He's angry, he's connected, and he's fighting back hard. I don't care, Sarah said, though her voice shook slightly. Emma wrote those messages for a reason. She needs help. I agree, Linda said. Just be prepared for this to get harder before it gets better. Sarah couldn't sleep again that night. She kept thinking about Emma, about what might be happening to her at home now that her cries for help had been discovered. Had Sarah made things worse? Had her report put Emma in more danger? Tuesday morning, Emma wasn't at school. Sarah checked her attendance records. Emma had perfect attendance. She never missed school. Never. At lunch, Sarah went to Linda's office. Emma's absent today. That can't be a coincidence. Linda checked the system. Her father called this morning, said she has the flu. She doesn't have the flu, Sarah said. He's keeping her home. Maybe punishing her for writing those messages. Maybe to prevent her from talking to anyone. Linda nodded grimly. I've already notified CPS. They're aware. They're planning to do an unannounced home visit today. But when the CPS worker showed up at the Bennett home that afternoon, Richard Bennett was charming and cooperative. He invited them in, showed them around the beautiful suburban house, explained that Emma was in bed with a fever, provided a doctor's note from a visit that morning. My daughter is fine, he told the CPS worker according to the report Sarah later saw. This is all a misunderstanding. Emma sometimes gets anxious and writes strange things. She's been seeing a therapist for anxiety. I can provide documentation. And he did. Medical records showing Emma had been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. Therapy notes describing her as prone to catastrophizing and dramatic thinking. The CPS worker interviewed Emma briefly in her room. Emma, pale and withdrawn, confirmed she had the flu. When asked about the messages in her homework, she said she didn't remember writing them, that sometimes she wrote random things when she was bored. The case was looking like it might be closed for lack of evidence. Sarah was devastated when she heard. She showed Linda more of the old homework assignments she'd examined, pointing out the pattern of messages over weeks. This isn't random, Sarah insisted. This is systematic. She was trying to communicate without being caught. And now she's been caught, and she's terrified, so she's denying everything. I believe you, Linda said. But legally, CPS needs more than hidden messages that the child won't confirm. They need evidence. They need the child to disclose. They need something concrete. So Emma just gets sent back to an abusive home because she's too scared to tell the truth? Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Unless we can find more evidence, Linda said gently. Or unless Emma feels safe enough to tell someone what's really happening. Sarah refused to give up. If CPS needed more evidence, she'd find it.
She started by talking to Emma's previous teachers. First, third grade teacher Mrs. Patricia Wong. "Emma," Patricia said, thinking back. "Sweet girl, very quiet. I remember she missed a lot of school that year. I think she had several cases of flu or stomach bugs. Her father was always very apologetic, very involved." Sarah's suspicions grew. "Do you still have her attendance records from that year?" Patricia pulled them up. Emma had missed 23 days of school in third grade, far more than the average student. Sarah then talked to Emma's second grade teacher, Mr. James Peterson. "I remember Emma," James said. "Quiet kid. I actually called her parents once because I noticed she had some bruises on her arms. The father explained she'd fallen off her bike. Seemed reasonable at the time." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "Do you remember anything else? Any other concerns?" James thought for a moment. "Actually, now that you mention it, Emma used to write a lot in second grade. Journal entries, stories. They were often dark, about characters who were trapped, who wanted to escape. I thought it was just creative writing, but looking back, maybe it was more than that." Sarah compiled everything. Used to fleeting absences over the years. Past bruises explained away. Dark, escape-themed creative writing. Gradual social withdrawal. The therapy diagnosis that could be either legitimate or a way to discredit her if she ever spoke up. And now explicit cries for help hidden in homework. She typed up a detailed report and sent it to CPS, to the school principal, and to Detective Karen Rodriguez, a Boston PD officer who specialized in child abuse cases. Detective Rodriguez called her that afternoon. "Miss Mitchell, I got your report. I want to hear everything directly from you." For the third time that week, Sarah explained the situation, but this time, she had a more complete picture to present. Detective Rodriguez listened carefully. "You've done good work documenting all this. The pattern you've identified is concerning, but I have to be honest with you. Without the child confirming abuse or physical evidence, it's going to be very difficult to build a case. So what do we do?" Sarah asked desperately. "We keep watching, we keep documenting, and we try to create an environment where Emma feels safe enough to tell someone the truth. That someone might be you, Ms. Mitchell. She trusted you enough to hide those messages in homework she knew you'd see. She was reaching out to you specifically." Sarah thought about that. "So you think she wanted me to find them?" "I think she was terrified to tell anyone directly but desperate for help. So she found a way to communicate that felt safer. Hidden messages that maybe someone would notice or maybe wouldn't. Plausible deniability. If her father found out, she could claim it was meaningless. But I did notice," Sarah said, "and now she's even more trapped because he knows someone's paying attention." "Maybe," Detective Rodriguez said, "or maybe she's relieved that someone finally saw. Maybe she's waiting to see if you'll give up, or if you'll keep fighting for her." "Don't give up, Miss Mitchell. That girl needs someone in her corner who won't look away." Emma returned to school on Thursday, still quiet, still withdrawn. Sarah watched her constantly, looking for any sign, an injury, a bruise, another hidden message, anything. On Friday, Sarah assigned another math homework worksheet. When students turned in their completed assignments on Monday, Sarah went through Emma's paper with a magnifying glass. There, in tiny letters in the margin, "Thank you for seeing." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Emma knew. Emma understood that Sarah had seen the messages, and she was grateful, even though nothing had changed yet, even though she was still trapped. Sarah wrote back. On the graded homework she returned to Emma, in equally small letters, visible only if you looked carefully, she wrote, "I see you. I won't stop trying to help. You're not alone." She had no idea if this was appropriate, if it might jeopardize any investigation, if it might make things worse. But Emma needed to know someone was still paying attention. That afternoon, Emma lingered after class as other students left. "Miss Mitchell?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, Emma." The girl looked at the floor, her body tense like she might bolt at any second. "Thank you for grading my homework carefully." It was carefully worded, deniable if anyone overheard. But Sarah understood. "I always grade everyone's homework carefully," Sarah said, equally careful. "I pay attention to all the details. If anyone ever needs anything, I'm here." Emma nodded slightly, then left quickly. But that small interaction gave Sarah hope. Emma was still trying to communicate. The door wasn't completely closed. Sarah continued documenting everything. Every absence, every time Emma flinched, every withdrawn behavior, every piece of dark creative writing Emma produced. She also started researching Richard Bennett. What she found was disturbing. Bennett had been investigated for domestic violence in his first marriage. Emma's biological mother had filed for divorce citing abuse, then suddenly dropped all allegations and accepted a settlement that gave Bennett primary custody. Emma's mother now lived across the country and had minimal contact with her daughter. Bennett's current wife, Michelle, had a police report from 3 years ago, a 911 call from their home for a domestic disturbance. But when police arrived, Michelle claimed it was a misunderstanding, that they'd just been arguing. No charges filed. There were complaints from former employees at Bennett's company about his temper, his controlling behavior, his verbal abuse, but nothing that had resulted in legal action. A pattern was emerging. Bennett was skilled at appearing respectable while being controlling and potentially violent behind closed doors. He knew how to explain away concerns. He knew how to manipulate situations. He knew how to keep his victims silent. Emma was trapped with a sophisticated abuser who knew every legal and social tool to maintain his control. Sarah sent all her research to Detective Rodriguez. "This is helpful," Rodriguez said, "but it's still not enough for criminal charges. We need Emma to speak up, or we need to catch him in the act, or we need physical evidence." "I know that's frustrating." "It's more than frustrating," Sarah said. "It's infuriating. Everyone can see the pattern, but we're powerless to stop it." "Not powerless," Rodriguez corrected, "just constrained by the need for evidence. The legal system is designed to presume innocence, which usually is a good thing, but in cases like this, it protects abusers who know how to work the system." Rodriguez paused. "Keep doing what you're doing, Miss Mitchell. Keep being present for Emma. Keep documenting. Keep showing her that someone cares. Eventually she might trust you enough to tell you the truth, and when she does, we'll be ready." Parent-teacher conferences were scheduled for the third week of November. Sarah dreaded the Bennett family conference, but knew it was an opportunity to observe. Richard Bennett arrived alone. His wife was working late, he explained with an apologetic smile. He sat across from Sarah, polished and professional in an expensive suit. "Miss Mitchell," he began, his tone friendly, but with an edge underneath. "I want to address the elephant in the room. I understand you were concerned about some things Emma wrote on her homework." Sarah chose her words carefully. "I saw some messages that concerned me. Yes. As a mandatory reporter, I'm required to report anything that suggests a child might be in danger." "Of course," Bennett said smoothly. "I completely understand, and I don't blame you for doing your job. But I want you to understand, Emma has anxiety issues. She sometimes writes dramatic things. Her therapist has confirmed this. There's absolutely nothing wrong in our home." He leaned forward slightly, his friendly expression not quite reaching his eyes. "I love my daughter. I would never hurt her. These false accusations have been incredibly stressful for our family. Emma has been upset. My wife has been upset. And frankly, I'm concerned about how this is affecting Emma's education and her relationship with you." "Emma's relationship with me is fine," Sarah said calmly. "And I'm not making accusations. I saw concerning messages and reported them as required. The authorities investigated. That's how the system works." "The system got it wrong," Bennett said, and now there was steel in his voice. "My daughter is fine. Our family is fine, and I'd appreciate it if you could focus on teaching Emma math and reading, and leave the parenting to me." It wasn't quite a threat, but it was close. Sarah felt her heart racing but kept her voice steady. "Mr. Bennett, my job is to educate Emma and to ensure her well-being. I take both aspects of that job seriously. If I see anything concerning, I'll continue to report it." "That's not negotiable." Bennett's jaw tightened. "Be careful, Miss Mitchell. False accusations can have consequences for everyone involved." After he left, Sarah sat at her desk, shaking. She immediately called Detective Rodriguez and reported the conversation. "That was absolutely a threat," Rodriguez said, "and it tells me something important. He's worried. He's trying to intimidate you into backing off. That means we're getting somewhere." "It doesn't feel like we're getting somewhere," Sarah said. "It feels like Emma's still trapped, and I'm making things worse for her." "You're not making things worse," Rodriguez said firmly. "You're the only person who's consistently advocated for her. Don't let him scare you off. That's exactly what he wants." That night, Sarah lay awake wondering if Rodriguez was right. What if she was making things worse? What if her interference was causing Emma to be punished at home? What if she should just mind her own business and hope Emma would be okay? Then she remembered those tiny, desperate messages. "Help me. Scared. He hurts me." No, she couldn't look away. She wouldn't. 2 weeks before winter break, Sarah assigned a creative writing project. Students were to write about their perfect day. Most students wrote about going to amusement parks, playing video games, visiting grandparents, typical 10-year-old fantasies. Emma's paper was different. She described a day where she woke up in a quiet house where no one yells, where she could eat breakfast without being scared, where she could go to school and come home without worry, where she could go to sleep without listening for footsteps. Emma didn't explicitly say anything about abuse, but the contrast between her perfect day, which was just basic safety and peace, and other students' fantastical wishes was stark. Sarah photographed the assignment and sent it to Detective Rodriguez and CPS, but more importantly, Sarah decided to take a risk. She kept Emma after class one day. "Emma, I read your perfect day assignment. It was beautifully written." Emma stared at her desk. "Thank you. I noticed," Sarah continued carefully, "that your perfect day was about feeling safe and peaceful. That made me wonder, do you not always feel safe and peaceful at home?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally she whispered, "If I tell you, he'll know. He always knows. And it will get worse." Sarah's heart broke. "Emma, I promise you there are people who can help, who can keep you safe. But we need you to tell us what's happening." Emma was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "He said if I ever tell anyone, he'll say I'm lying, that I have mental problems. He'll show doctors my therapy records. No one will believe me." "I believe you," Sarah said softly. "And there are other people who will believe you too. But Emma, I need you to tell someone officially. A police officer, or a social worker. Can you do that?" Emma shook her head frantically. I can't. You don't understand. He'll make it worse. He always makes it worse." Sarah made a decision. "Okay, I'm not going to force you. But Emma, I want you to know something. I see you. I see what you're trying to tell me through your homework, through your writing. I see that you're scared. And I'm not going to stop trying to help you, whether you're ready to speak up or not." Emma looked up, her eyes desperate. Can you just keep watching? Keep paying attention, because someday, maybe I'll be brave enough. But not yet. I'm not brave enough yet. I'll keep watching, Sarah promised. And Emma, you're already brave. Asking for help, even in hidden messages, even when you're terrified, that takes incredible courage. That conversation wasn't the breakthrough Sarah had hoped for. Emma still hadn't made an official disclosure, but it was progress. Emma had admitted, at least to Sarah, that something was wrong, that she needed help, that she was scared. Sarah documented the conversation and reported it to Detective Rodriguez and CPS. This is significant, Rodriguez said. Emma indirectly confirmed abuse. It's not enough for criminal charges yet, but it supports keeping the case open and continuing to monitor the situation. How long does Emma have to live like this? Sarah asked. How much more evidence do we need before someone intervenes? I know it's frustrating, Rodriguez said, but we're getting closer. Emma's starting to trust you. Eventually she'll trust you enough to make a full disclosure. When she does, we'll act immediately. And in the meantime, you do exactly what you've been doing. Be present. Be consistent. Be someone Emma knows she can trust. You're her lifeline right now, Miss Mitchell. Don't give up.
The breaking point came 3 days before winter break. Emma came to school with a black eye. It was poorly covered with makeup. Someone had tried to hide it, but not well enough. Sarah saw it immediately. She sent Emma to the school nurse with another student as an escort, then called Detective Rodriguez. Emma has a black eye. Clear injury. This is the physical evidence you needed. Rodriguez arrived at the school within 30 minutes, along with a CPS investigator. They interviewed Emma in the nurse's office. At first, Emma stuck to the story she'd obviously been told to say she'd fallen off her bike, but the injury pattern didn't match a bike fall. And when Rodriguez gently pressed her, asking directly if someone had hit her, Emma broke down.
My dad, she sobbed. He hit me because I got a B on my spelling test. He said I was stupid. He said I was embarrassing him. He punched me and told me if I told anyone he'd make sure I never saw my mom again. Everything came pouring out. Years of physical and emotional abuse. Being hit for minor mistakes. Being locked in her room for hours. Being told she was worthless, stupid, that no one would ever believe her if she told. The makeup on her face was her stepmother's. Michelle had put it on Emma that morning and told her to say she fell off her bike if anyone asked. Detective Rodriguez recorded everything. The school nurse documented Emma's injuries. Not just the black eye, but old bruises in various stages of healing. Marks on her arms consistent with being grabbed forcefully. Emma, Rodriguez said gently, I need you to understand something. You're not going home today. We're going to take you somewhere safe while we investigate. Your father won't be able to hurt you anymore. Emma's eyes went wide. But he'll be so angry. He'll say I'm lying. He'll say I'm crazy. He can say whatever he wants, Rodriguez said firmly. But we have evidence now. We have your testimony. We have documented injuries. We have a pattern of reports. He can't talk his way out of this. Emma was taken into emergency protective custody. She was placed with a foster family while the investigation proceeded. Within hours, Richard Bennett was arrested at his workplace on charges of child abuse. Michelle Bennett was charged with being an accessory and failing to report child abuse. Sarah watched from her classroom window as police cars arrived at the school to collect evidence. She felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. Emma was finally safe. But the battle was just beginning.
The next few days were chaos. Parents at the school were shocked. Not Richard Bennett. He's such a respected community member. School board members questioned whether the school had acted appropriately. Some praised Sarah for her vigilance. Others criticized her for destroying a family. Sarah received hate mail from people who thought she'd overreacted. She also received thank you notes from domestic violence survivors and child advocates who praised her for not giving up. Richard Bennett hired expensive lawyers who argued that Emma was mentally unstable, that she'd made everything up, that the injury was genuinely from a bike accident. They presented Emma's therapy records, claiming they proved she had credibility issues. But the prosecution had more than just Emma's word. They had the pattern of hidden messages in homework over several months, Emma's creative writing showing clear signs of abuse, Sarah's detailed documentation of behavioral changes, the injuries documented by the school nurse, past reports from Emma's mother during their divorce, the domestic disturbance call from the current wife, complaints from former employees about Bennett's temper, and critically, they had Emma's testimony, detailed, consistent, and heartbreaking. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Sarah testified about finding the messages, about the pattern she'd documented, about Emma's gradual withdrawal and fear. Bennett's defense attorneys tried to paint Sarah as an overreaching teacher with a savior complex who had manipulated a troubled child. They suggested she'd planted ideas in Emma's head, that she'd encouraged Emma to make false accusations. But when Emma took the stand, pale, nervous, but determined, and described years of abuse in clear, specific detail. The jury believed her. Richard Bennett was convicted of multiple counts of child abuse and assault. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Michelle Bennett accepted a plea deal, testifying against her husband in exchange for probation and mandatory domestic violence counseling. She admitted she'd known about the abuse but had been too afraid of Richard to intervene. Emma didn't return to Lincoln Elementary. The publicity had been too intense, and her foster family lived in a different district. But Sarah stayed in touch with her through the foster care system and eventually through Emma's biological mother, who fought for and won custody after Bennett's conviction. 6 months after the trial, Emma's mother, Jennifer, brought Emma to visit Sarah after school one day. Emma looked different, healthier, less tense, with light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She ran to hug Sarah. "Thank you," Emma said, crying. "Thank you for seeing my messages. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for saving me." Sarah hugged her tightly. "You saved yourself, Emma. You were brave enough to ask for help, even when you were terrified. You survived. You're a fighter." Jennifer wiped tears from her own eyes. "I can never repay you, Miss Mitchell. I lost Emma in the custody battle. Richard convinced the court I was unstable, and I didn't have money for good lawyers. I've spent 7 years feeling helpless, knowing my daughter was with him, but unable to protect her. You gave her back to me. You gave us both a second chance." Over coffee, Jennifer explained what had happened. Richard was charming when we first married, but after Emma was born, he changed. He became controlling, then verbally abusive, then physically violent. I tried to leave, but he threatened to take Emma and make sure I never saw her again. When I finally filed for divorce, he used his money and connections to paint me as mentally ill. He won custody, and I got 2 supervised visits a year. She looked at Emma, who was coloring quietly at a nearby table. I tried to tell people he was abusive. I tried to tell social workers during custody evaluations. But he was so convincing, so respectable. No one believed me. They believed him. Jennifer turned back to Sarah. "You believed Emma. You looked past the respectable facade and saw the truth. You didn't let him intimidate you into silence. That's rare, Miss Mitchell. Most people don't want to get involved. They don't want to rock the boat. You risked your reputation, your job, maybe your safety to protect a child who wasn't even yours. That's extraordinary." "I just did what any teacher should do," Sarah said. "I paid attention." "Most teachers don't," Jennifer said. "Trust me." Emma tried to tell people before. She told her 2nd grade teacher about feeling scared. That teacher talked to Richard, and Emma got punished for making up stories. She wrote dark stories in 3rd grade. That teacher just thought she was creative. She got quieter and more withdrawn. Teachers noticed but thought she was just shy. Jennifer's voice broke. "You were the first person who really saw her, who took her seriously, who fought for her even when it was hard. You saved her life, Miss Mitchell. Literally. I don't think Emma would have survived much longer under Richard's care." After Emma's case became public, Sarah was approached by the Boston School District's superintendent. They wanted her to develop a training program for teachers on recognizing signs of child abuse and responding appropriately. "Your documentation was exemplary," Superintendent James Martinez told her. "The way you noticed subtle patterns, kept detailed records, and persisted even when the initial investigation didn't find evidence. That's exactly what we need to teach other educators." Sarah was hesitant. "I'm not an expert. I'm just a teacher who paid attention." "That's exactly why you're the right person," Martinez said. "Teachers need to hear from another teacher, not from a clinical expert who's never been in a classroom. You understand the realities, the time constraints, the doubts, the fear of being wrong, the pressure from parents and administration." Sarah agreed, but only on one condition. Emma and Jennifer had to approve of her telling their story. They did more than approve. They wanted to be part of it. "If our story can help protect other children," Jennifer said, "then something good comes from all those years of suffering. Emma and I both want that." The training program Sarah developed was called See the Invisible, Recognizing Hidden Cries for Help. It covered warning signs teachers should watch for, behavioral changes, withdrawal, aggression, fear, unexplained or poorly explained injuries, frequent absences, inappropriate clothing for weather, covering bruises, flinching or fearful responses to adults, age-inappropriate sexual knowledge or behavior, poor hygiene or signs of neglect, hidden messages in schoolwork, dark or concerning themes in creative work, fear of going home, changes in academic performance, how to document concerns, keep detailed dated notes, save all concerning work samples, photograph any visible injuries, with appropriate permissions, document conversations with the child, note patterns over time, be specific and factual, not interpretive, how to report, understand mandatory reporting laws, know who to contact, CPS, police, school protocol,
Don't investigate yourself. Report and let professionals investigate. Protect confidentiality while reporting. Follow up if nothing happens. How to support the child. Be consistent and present. Don't pressure the child to disclose. Believe the child if they do disclose. Reassure them it's not their fault. How to handle pushback. Know your legal protections as a mandatory reporter. Document intimidation attempts. Don't be discouraged if initial investigation doesn't confirm abuse. Remember that absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Get support from colleagues and administration. Sarah piloted the program at Lincoln Elementary, then expanded to other Boston schools. The response was overwhelming. Teachers were hungry for this kind of practical, real-world guidance. Many shared stories of times they'd suspected abuse but didn't report because they weren't sure, or times they'd reported and nothing happened so they gave up. Sarah's training emphasized persistence and trusting instincts. "I'd rather you make 10 false reports than miss one real case," Sarah told teachers. The discomfort of being wrong is worth less than a child's safety. 6 months after Sarah began training teachers, she received an email that made her cry. "Ms. Mitchell, my name is David Torres. I'm a 5th grade teacher in Springfield. I attended your training last month. Yesterday I noticed that one of my students had written tiny messages in the margins of her social studies homework. Help me," and scared. "Because of your training, I knew what to look for and what to do. I reported it immediately. The girl is now in protective custody, and her father has been arrested for abuse. If I hadn't attended your training, I would have missed those messages completely. You didn't just save Emma, you've saved countless other children through teaching us to see what you saw. Thank you." That email was the first of many. Teachers across Massachusetts, and eventually across the country, started recognizing signs they'd previously missed. The training went viral in education circles, shared at conferences, adapted by school districts, incorporated into teacher preparation programs. Within 2 years, Sarah's training had been completed by over 50,000 teachers. Those teachers made 1,447 child abuse reports that they likely wouldn't have made otherwise. Of those reports, 412 were confirmed cases of abuse, leading to 398 children being removed from dangerous situations. But the impact went beyond numbers. Teachers became more vigilant, more observant, more willing to trust their instincts. School cultures shifted from "don't get involved" to "always report concerns." Emma's story, with her permission, became the centerpiece of the training. Her actual homework with the hidden messages, names redacted, was shown to teachers. Her creative writing about wanting to escape was analyzed. The pattern of documentation Sarah had kept was held up as a model. "This could be any of your students," Sarah would tell teachers. "The quiet kid in the back row, the one who does their homework perfectly, the one from the good family. Abuse doesn't have a face, it hides behind respectability. Your job is to look past appearances and see the child who's suffering in silence." Not everyone appreciated Sarah's work. Some parents felt the training encouraged teachers to be overly suspicious, to see abuse where none existed. A parents' rights group accused Sarah of promoting a climate of fear and false accusations. The group pointed to cases where teachers, inspired by Sarah's training, had made reports that turned out to be unfounded. Families had been investigated, children had been questioned, parents had been traumatized, all based on misinterpretations or overreactions. One particularly vocal critic was a parent named Michael Harrison, whose family had been investigated after his daughter wrote a dark story in class. The investigation found no evidence of abuse. The story had been inspired by a scary movie the girl had watched. "Sarah Mitchell has created a witch hunt," Harrison told local media. "Teachers are now trained to assume the worst about parents. My daughter wrote a creative story, and suddenly CPS is investigating us, questioning our parenting, treating us like criminals. This training goes too far." Sarah took the criticism seriously. She met with Harrison and other concerned parents to hear their perspectives. "I'm truly sorry your family went through that investigation," Sarah told Harrison. "I can't imagine how stressful that must have been. But I have to ask you, what should that teacher have done differently? Your daughter wrote a concerning story. The teacher reported it as required. CPS investigated and cleared you. The system worked. The system traumatized my daughter," Harrison countered. "She was questioned by strangers about whether her parents hurt her. She felt like she'd done something wrong by writing a story. That's not the system working." Sarah thought carefully. "You're right that investigations can be traumatic, even when they don't find abuse. That's a real problem with the system. But here's my question. If we train teachers not to report concerning indicators because investigations might be traumatic, what happens to the real victims? What happens to children like Emma, who are actually being abused?" Harrison didn't have an answer. Sarah continued, "I understand the tension. I really do. We want to protect children from abuse, but we also want to protect families from false accusations. Those goals sometimes conflict, but I believe, and I think the law agrees, that when in doubt we err on the side of protecting children. That means some investigations will turn out to be unfounded. That's unfortunate, but it's better than missing real abuse." The conversation didn't fully resolve the disagreement, but it helped Sarah refine her training. She added more emphasis on distinguishing between genuine warning signs and normal childhood behavior. She brought in CPS workers to explain how investigations work and how to minimize trauma for children and families. The refined training acknowledged that false reports were a real concern, while maintaining that teachers should still report anything genuinely concerning. The goal wasn't to make teachers paranoid, but to make them observant and thoughtful. 3 years after Emma's rescue, Sarah was invited to testify before Congress about child abuse prevention and the role of educators. Standing in the congressional hearing room, Sarah felt the weight of representing not just herself but thousands of teachers who worked every day to protect vulnerable students. Members of the committee, Sarah began, "I'm not here as an expert or an advocate. I'm here as a 4th grade teacher who found hidden messages in a student's homework and made a decision to report what I'd seen." She told Emma's story, the tiny messages, the months of documentation, the pushback from administration and parents, the moment Emma finally felt safe enough to disclose, the rescue and recovery. "Emma is thriving now," Sarah said. "She's 13 years old, an A student, active in drama club, living safely with her mother. She has nightmares sometimes. She's still in therapy. The trauma doesn't just disappear, but she's alive, she's safe, and she has a future. She has those things because I paid attention to details most people miss." Sarah paused, looking around the room. "But here's what troubles me. Emma tried to tell people for years. She wrote concerning stories in 2nd grade. Her teacher noticed but didn't report. She told her 3rd grade teacher she felt scared at home. That teacher mentioned it to her father, who punished Emma and assured the teacher everything was fine. She hid messages in multiple homework assignments before I found them." Sarah's voice grew passionate. "Emma fell through the cracks repeatedly before someone finally caught her. And she's not unique. Across this country, children are suffering abuse while teachers, doctors, neighbors, family members see warning signs but don't report them. Why? Because they're not sure. Because they don't want to get involved. Because they're afraid of being wrong. Because they don't know what to look for or what to do." She held up a folder. "This is the training I developed after Emma's case. It's been completed by over 80,000 teachers across the country. Those teachers have made over 2,000 child abuse reports they likely wouldn't have made otherwise. Over 600 of those reports confirmed abuse and led to children being protected." Sarah looked directly at the committee members. "That means at least 600 children are safer today because we trained their teachers to recognize warning signs and have the courage to report them. 600 Emmas who got help before it was too late. But there are thousands more who still haven't been found, who are suffering in silence, who are trying to communicate in subtle ways that no one is trained to see." She outlined her recommendations: Raman Dowry annual training for all educators on recognizing abuse, federal funding for evidence-based training programs, legal protections for educators who report in good faith, better coordination between schools and child protective services, support systems for children during investigation, trauma-informed approaches to minimize harm to children and families. "I'm not asking for a perfect system," Sarah concluded. "Perfect doesn't exist. What I'm asking for is a system where educators are equipped, empowered, and supported in protecting vulnerable children, where reporting concerning signs is normalized, not stigmatized, where children like Emma don't have to suffer for years before someone finally pays attention." The testimony went viral. Clips were shared across social media. News outlets picked up the story. Within weeks, several states announced plans to implement mandatory training programs based on Sarah's model. When Emma turned 14, she asked Sarah if she could speak publicly about her experience. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked. "Once your story is out there with your face and name attached, you can't take it back. People will know. They'll have opinions. Some will be supportive, but some will be cruel." "I know," Emma said, "but I've been thinking about all those other kids who are trapped like I was, who are trying to ask for help but don't know how, who think no one will believe them. I want them to know, someone will believe you. Someone will help. You just have to keep trying." With her mother's support, Emma recorded a video for Sarah's training program. It was heartbreaking and powerful. "My name is Emma, and when I was 10 years old, my 4th grade teacher saved my life. I was being abused by my father. I was scared every single day. I wanted to tell someone, but my father had convinced me that no one would believe me, that I'd get in trouble if I told, that things would get worse. So I tried to ask for help in a way that felt safer. I wrote tiny messages in my homework. Help me. Scared. He hurts me. I made them so small that maybe no one would see them, but maybe someone would. I didn't know what else to do. Miss Mitchell saw them. She paid attention to details other people missed. And she didn't give up, even when I got too scared and denied everything. Even when my father tried to make her stop. Even when it would have been easier for her to just teach math and not get involved. If you're a kid being hurt and you're watching this, keep trying to tell someone. Write messages. Tell a teacher. Tell a counselor. Tell a friend's parent. Tell anyone who will listen. It might take multiple tries. Some adults won't believe you, or won't know what to do. But keep trying until you find someone like Miss Mitchell who will see you, and won't look away. And if you're a teacher watching this, pay attention. Really pay attention. To the quiet kid in the back. To the student whose behavior changes. To the hidden messages in homework. To the dark themes in creative writing. To the bruises and the fear and the withdrawal. Trust your instincts. Report what concerns you. Don't give up if the first investigation doesn't find anything. Be the person who sees what everyone else misses. I'm alive and safe today because Miss Mitchell chose to pay attention.
Because she chose to care about a student she barely knew. Because she chose to keep fighting for me even when it was hard. You can be that person for someone else. Please be that person. The video was viewed over 5 million times.
Emma's courage in sharing her story publicly inspired other survivors to come forward, other teachers to be more vigilant, other students to keep asking for help. Sarah's work expanded beyond teacher training. She partnered with child welfare organizations to develop programs for multiple professionals who interact with children, for healthcare providers, teaching doctors and nurses to look for patterns of injuries, to interview children separately from parents, to document suspicions thoroughly, to report even when parents seem respectable and credible, for youth coaches and activity leaders, training people who work with children in sports, arts, and other activities to recognize signs of abuse and create safe environments where children feel comfortable disclosing, for faith community leaders, helping pastors, youth ministers, and religious educators understand their role in protecting children and reporting abuse, even when it involves prominent community members, for school staff beyond teachers, training bus drivers, cafeteria workers, janitors, and administrative staff to recognize warning signs and know how to report concerns. Child abuse isn't just a teacher issue, Sarah explained at a conference. Children interact with dozens of adults in various settings. Every single one of those adults has the potential to notice something wrong and take action. We need to train all of them. The program, now called the See and Protect Initiative, became a comprehensive approach to community-wide child protection. Cities that implemented the full program saw significant increases in child abuse reports, but importantly, also saw increases in early intervention before abuse became severe. "We're catching cases earlier," said Dr. Rachel Foster, a child welfare researcher studying Sarah's programs. "Teachers are noticing warning signs and reporting before children suffer years of abuse. Healthcare providers are asking better questions. Communities are creating cultures where children feel safer disclosing." This is exactly how systemic change happens. But Sarah's crusade came with personal costs she hadn't anticipated. Her marriage suffered. Her husband Tom had been supportive at first, but as Sarah became more consumed with training, speaking, and advocacy, he felt neglected. "You're never home," Tom said during one painful argument. "You're always traveling for conferences, always developing new programs, always focused on other people's children. What about us? What about our life?" Sarah tried to balance her advocacy work with her personal life, but it was difficult. The work felt urgent. Children were suffering right now, and she had knowledge and skills that could help them. Eventually, Tom gave her an ultimatum: scale back the advocacy work or lose the marriage. Sarah chose the work. "I can't stop," she told Tom through tears. "I can't know what I know about how many children are suffering and just teach 4th grade and have a normal life." Emma trusted me with her story. 600 other children are safe because of the training. Thousands more might be protected if I keep pushing. How do I choose my comfort over their safety? "But what about your happiness?" Tom asked. "What about your health? You're burning out, Sarah. You can't save every child." "I know I can't save every child," Sarah said, "but I can save some. And isn't that worth sacrificing comfort?" Tom left 6 months later. The divorce was amicable, but heartbreaking. They'd been married for 12 years. Sarah threw herself even deeper into her work after the divorce. Friends worried about her. Her therapist expressed concern about her lack of work-life balance. "You're experiencing secondary trauma," her therapist, Dr. Maya Patel, explained. "You're carrying the weight of all these children suffering. You're hyper-focused on the mission to the exclusion of self-care. This isn't sustainable." "How do I care about myself when children are being hurt?" Sarah asked. "How do I justify taking a vacation or relaxing when I know there are kids out there writing messages in homework that no one's seeing?" "Because you can't help anyone if you burn out completely," Dr. Patel said gently. "You're no good to Emma, or to the thousands of teachers you're training, or to future children who need advocates if you collapse from exhaustion. Self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary." Sarah knew Dr. Patel was right. But knowing it and actually practicing it were different things. She started setting boundaries, limiting travel, saying no to some speaking engagements, taking actual weekends off. It was hard. Every invitation she declined felt like a child she was failing to protect, but gradually she learned that sustainable advocacy required taking care of herself too. 5 years after finding Emma's messages, Sarah was invited back to Emma's new school to speak at a career day. Emma, now 15, introduced her. "This is Miss Mitchell. She was my 4th grade teacher. She saved my life." Sarah spoke to the students about teaching, about the importance of education, about paying attention to people around you who might need help. During the Q&A, a student raised their hand. "Miss Mitchell, do you ever regret getting involved in Emma's situation? It sounds like it caused you a lot of problems." Sarah thought carefully. "Regret? No. It was hard.
I faced criticism, threats, stress. My marriage ended partly because of how consumed I became with this work, but I don't regret it, because Emma is standing right there, alive and thriving, because 600 other children are safe because of what we learned from Emma's case, because thousands of teachers now know what to look for. The personal cost was high, but the alternative, staying silent and letting children suffer, would have cost me my soul. After the presentation, Emma pulled Sarah aside. I need to tell you something. I'm thinking about becoming a social worker. I want to help kids like me, kids who are trapped and scared and don't know how to ask for help. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Emma, that's wonderful. You'll be amazing at it. You understand what these kids are going through in a way that most social workers can't. I learned from the best, Emma said, hugging Sarah. You showed me what it means to really see people, to pay attention to the ones everyone else ignores or doesn't understand, to keep fighting even when it's hard. That's what I want to do with my life. Emma pulled out a notebook. I've been keeping track of your programs. The See and Protect initiative has now trained over 200,000 people across 47 states. Those trainings have led to over 5,000 child abuse reports, with about 1,800 confirmed cases. That's 1,800 kids who are safer because you found my messages 5 years ago, because you didn't look away. Sarah was overwhelmed. She'd known her work was having an impact, but hearing the numbers laid out like that, 1,800 children protected, was staggering. Those aren't just numbers, Emma said softly. Those are lives, futures, kids who will grow up without the trauma I experienced, kids who will become adults without the nightmares, the therapy, the struggle to trust people. You gave them that, Miss Mitchell. You gave me that. 10 years after finding Emma's first message, Sarah was invited to receive a national award for child advocacy. She stood on stage in Washington, D.C., looking at hundreds of educators, social workers, and advocates. 10 years ago, Sarah began, I was just a fourth-grade teacher grading homework on a Friday night. I almost missed the tiny messages my student had hidden in her math worksheet. They were so small, so carefully concealed. I could have easily overlooked them, but I didn't. I noticed. I reported. I didn't give up, and that choice changed everything. She paused, letting that sink in. I'm not special. I'm not uniquely gifted at recognizing abuse. I'm just a teacher who paid attention and trusted my instincts. And that's my message to everyone here. You don't need special skills to protect children. You just need to notice, to care, to act. Sarah shared updated statistics. Over 300,000 professionals trained through the See and Protect initiative. Over 10,000 child abuse reports made as a direct result of the training. Over 3,200 confirmed cases. Over 3,000 children removed from abusive situations. But the impact goes beyond what we can measure, Sarah continued. How many children are safer because their teachers are now more vigilant? How many potential abusers have been deterred because they know people are paying attention? How many children have been taught through these programs that abuse is never their fault and that adults will help them? We'll never know those numbers, but I believe they're significant. She looked directly at the camera recording the event. If you're an educator, a coach, a healthcare provider, a youth leader, anyone who works with children, I'm asking you to pay attention, really pay attention, not just to the obvious signs, but to the subtle ones. The child who gets quieter, the homework with hidden messages, the concerning themes in creative work, the flinching, the fear, the withdrawal. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, report it. Yes, you might be wrong sometimes. Yes, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, you might face pushback. But you might also save a life. You might be the only person who notices. You might be the only one who cares enough to act.
Be that person. Be the one who sees what others miss. Be the one who doesn't look away. Because somewhere right now, there's another Emma. Another child suffering in silence. Another desperate cry for help that's barely visible. Will you be the person who notices, who reports, who refuses to give up? That's all it takes. One person paying attention. One report made in good faith. One adult who chooses to protect a child over protecting their own comfort. Be that person. The audience rose in standing ovation. But Sarah was thinking about Emma, about the 3,000 other children who'd been protected, about all the future children who would be saved because people learned to pay attention. The next morning, Sarah returned to her classroom at Lincoln Elementary. She'd never stopped teaching. It was her anchor, her reminder of why the advocacy work mattered. As students filtered in, Sarah looked at each of them with fresh eyes. Which of these children might be suffering silently? Which might be trying to communicate in ways too subtle for most people to notice? She thought about Emma's hidden messages. So small, so carefully concealed, so easy to miss. She thought about all the times children try to ask for help without actually asking, the behavioral changes, the concerning artwork, the stories with dark themes, the absences, the fear. Sarah made a silent promise to her students. I will pay attention. I will notice the details others miss. I will trust my instincts. I will report concerns even when I'm not completely sure. I will be the person who doesn't look away. Later that day, she received an email from a teacher in Oregon. Miss Mitchell, I completed your training last month. Yesterday, I noticed one of my students had drawn disturbing pictures in the margins of her notebook. Images of a child hiding under a bed. A large threatening figure looming over her. Because of your training, I knew to document this and report it. The investigation confirmed abuse. The child is now in protective custody. If I hadn't taken your training, I would have thought she was just a kid with a dark imagination. You taught me to look deeper. You saved another life, even from 3,000 miles away. Sarah read the email 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was it. This was the real legacy of that Friday night 10 years ago, when she'd found Emma's messages. It wasn't just Emma's rescue. It wasn't just the thousands of children protected through the programs she'd developed. It was the cultural shift she'd helped create. A culture where educators were trained to notice, empowered to report, supported in advocating for vulnerable children. Sarah opened her laptop and began writing. Not another training program or curriculum, but a letter to every educator who might read it. Dear teacher, right now, as you read this, there's probably a child in your classroom who's suffering. They might be being abused at home. They might be neglected. They might be trapped in a situation that's destroying them piece by piece. That child needs you to notice, to pay attention to the details most people miss, to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, to report your concerns even when you're not certain, to keep advocating even when it's hard. 10 years ago, I found tiny messages hidden in a student's homework, messages so small they were almost invisible. Help me. Scared. He hurts me. I almost missed them. I could have easily just graded the math problems and moved on, but I didn't. I noticed, and that choice saved a life. You have that same power, every single day, with every assignment you grade, every student you observe, every parent interaction you have, the power to be the one who sees what everyone else misses, the one who speaks up when others stay silent, the one who doesn't give up. It won't always be easy. You might report concerns that turn out to be nothing. You might face pushback from parents or administration. You might doubt yourself. But please, please don't let those fears stop you from protecting a child who desperately needs protection, because somewhere in your classroom, there might be another Emma, another child trying to ask for help in ways most people won't notice, another life hanging in the balance, waiting for one adult to pay attention. Be that adult. Trust your instincts. Document what concerns you. Report without hesitation. Don't give up when investigations don't immediately confirm abuse. Be present. Be consistent. Be the safe adult that child can eventually trust. The child sitting in the back row, the quiet one who does perfect homework. Look closer. The messages might be hidden. The pain might be invisible. But if you pay attention, really pay attention, you'll see it. And when you see it, act. Make the call. File the report. Be uncomfortable if necessary, because that child's safety is worth more than your comfort. 10 years ago, one child wrote hidden messages in her homework, and one teacher noticed. That led to a rescue. That led to a training program. That led to thousands of children being protected, all because one person paid attention. You can be that person for someone else. Don't miss the messages. Don't look away. Don't convince yourself it's not your business. Pay attention. Report concerns. Save lives. That's all it takes. With hope and urgency, Sarah Mitchell. She posted the letter on the See and Protect Initiative website, knowing it would be read by thousands of educators. And as she prepared for the next day's lessons, Sarah thought about Emma, now 15, thriving, planning to become a social worker to help other children like herself. The cycle continued. One rescued child becoming an advocate, one teacher's choice inspiring thousands of others to pay attention, one hidden message leading to a movement that had protected thousands of vulnerable children. And somewhere, right now, another teacher was grading homework. Another child had hidden a message. Another life was waiting to be saved by someone who would choose to notice, to care, to act. Sarah hoped they wouldn't miss it. She hoped they would pay attention, because that's how the world changed, one noticed child at a time. This story is dedicated to every teacher, counselor, coach, and caring adult who has ever noticed something wrong and had the courage to report it. Your vigilance protects the vulnerable. Your willingness to act saves lives. Thank you for paying attention when it would be easier to look away.
Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.